Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Dave from Chase the Summit, and this is the Trail Talk podcast where we talk about all the other stuff that I don't talk about on the main YouTube channel. We talk about here, which could be fitness tech, wearable news, ultra marathon running, trail running in general, being a dad. Whatever it is I'm into on a given week is what I talk about here because, well, I'm by myself and there's no one here to tell me to shut up. So if you're here for that, I appreciate it. If you're not here for that, stick around. You might enjoy it. So I've got a couple of things I want to address right off the bat. And the first one is I apologize for the regular podcast listeners out there. I haven't published a podcast in a month. Life has gotten a little bit busy. And if you've been following the main channel or my Instagram account, you probably know why it's gotten pretty busy. But the long and short of it is, holiday season is approaching and the life of a, sort of tech YouTuber gets kind of crazy this time of year. So I've been trying to keep up with the main channel and producing videos and testing things and traveling, which we will talk about today. But long story short, I apologize. I will try to, get the podcast to a more stable level in the near future. I also want to give a big shout out to the Patreon members that have continued to support this show for the past year. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's a way to just directly contribute to me or your favorite creator, a couple of bucks every month. That really goes a long way. And honestly, it does help motivate me to turn the microphones on and the lights on to make the podcast. Because honestly, the podcast is just for fun. It's not like something I'm trying to do professionally or anything. It's just, something I want to try to keep up with because I think it's healthy for me. It's like a form of therapy to just get my thoughts all out there in one recording, if that makes sense. So thank you to the Patreon members, the YouTube members. It means a lot. And on that note, shout out to the Chase the Summit Trail Talk podcast YouTube channel, which I need to rebrand. I feel like this name is just getting out of control. Chase the Summit Trail Talk podcast, a little bit long. If you've got ideas for a new name, let me know in my Instagram or email me or something. But go check out the YouTube channel for the podcast. It's separate from the main YouTube channel, and that's where you can actually see me as well as hear me because I'm now recording video versions of every podcast. Just feel like it's a little bit more engaging. Plus, you can comment over there, and you can't comment on a regular podcast. So go check out the YouTube channel, and if you're an audio listener, that's cool too. Thank you for continuing to listen. Okay. So lots of things to address. I'll start with Cupertino. So if you've been following the main channel, a couple of weeks ago, I got invited to travel out to Apple headquarters for the announcement of the Apple Watch Ultra 2, the Apple Watch Series 9, the new iPhone 15s. And I really wasn't expecting this. I was talking with a friend of mine, Matt Legrand. Shout out Matt. He's another YouTuber out there. And we were kind of joking around with each other like, hey, did you get your invite? And, obviously neither of us were expecting an invite. And then it showed up in my email and I quickly screenshotted it and sent it to Matt. And he did the same thing to me and said, holy crap, we both got invited. And it's, relatively small YouTubers typically don't get invited to those things. So it's kind of a really, really nice form of validation that whatever we're doing or whatever I'm doing on YouTube, Apple seems to like. So they invited me, and that's kind of when I had to scramble because the invitation came only like a couple of weeks before the actual event. And so I needed to book flights. I live in the Boston area in Massachusetts. The event happens in Cupertino, which is outside of San Francisco, out in California. So there's, flights, rental cars, there's hotel accommodations, all of that I had to sort out. And along with having 4 kids and being, I'm a pretty prominent figure in my family. I need to be at the bus stop and things like that. So I had to get my wife to buy off on this whole trip as well. Thankfully, she did, and I appreciate that, Jen, if you're listening to this. So I got to fly out to Cupertino. I flew in super early. I had a big plan to try to make the trip as productive as possible because I had a lot of other stuff going on with testing and making videos for other devices that weren't necessarily Apple. And I wanted to maximize my time. And the funny thing about the hotel that I stayed at was that unknowingly, myself, Matt Legrand, DC Rainmaker, and DesFit, and I'm sure you're aware of who those guys are if you're watching this podcast, we all booked the same hotel, which actually turned out to be a lot of fun for a bunch of different reasons. But yeah, we were all in the same hotel. So I found that out before the trip. So I ended up flying in early. Like I said, I worked for a while, did some video editing, and I was just hanging out in sort of the open space at the hotel we were at. There was sort of a courtyard, and I had my laptop and my camera stuff, and I was just kind of hanging out editing. And that's when I through the back of my vision, I noticed a guy walking by who turned out to be Ray Maker, and I had never met him in person. So it was super cool to actually, shake hands with him, say hi, and have a quick conversation before he went off to, get ready for the day. I continued to edit and stuff, and we all agreed, Matt, Des, Ray, and myself, to meet up for dinner later in the evening. But it turns out that Ray and Des work on a different schedule than just about everyone else in the world, and they eat dinner at like midnight. So we found that out the hard way. We ended up going out to eat at like midnight, and it was a lot of fun though, just kind of catching up with these guys, learning what they're all about, seeing them off camera, and just like seeing their personalities. And I'll spoil it, they are exactly who you would expect. Like the people you see on camera are basically, they're as real as they are on camera in person. Super friendly, really awesome to get to know them in person. So the next day was the big day, the event day, and we all woke up early. I went down, got some coffee and stuff. And that's when I agreed. I told Matt that I'd give him a ride over because he didn't have a car. So the crazy thing about Apple is just the headquarters. This place, if you're unaware of what Apple Park is, like go and Google it and get an aerial view of the building. It's like this giant donut-shaped building that is massive, first of all. And not only do they own that building, they own like just about the entire, like half the city. There's buildings all around Apple headquarters where they do other stuff. And then there's like the visitor center outside of the main building. That's sort of like the coolest Apple store you'll ever see. It's got like an upper deck with like umbrellas and tables and stuff. And there's like a full blown coffee shop inside along with the Apple store. And it's really, really cool. So we drove in. You go through this gate, and then you go into the most elaborate underground parking facility I've ever seen. And that's when we got ushered over to reception and then into the Steve Jobs Theater after going through like security and stuff. So the Steve Jobs Theater, again, is a building that you'll have to Google to really appreciate. It's entirely made out of glass. Like the entire building is glass. There's no structure to it. There's no like support columns or anything. It's literally just all glass. And then the ceiling, the roof of it, is made out of carbon fiber with lights on it and stuff. It's like mind blowing to walk into that building. And I've seen it so many times on camera and YouTube videos and stuff. So to be there, to be standing in front of it was like, wow, I'm here. And that's when things got really weird. So not only did I get to meet like DC Rainmaker and Des and Matt, all these other like famous online personalities started showing up, including the likes of, MKBHD, Marquez Brownlee showed up, and we'll talk about him more in a minute because that got really interesting. And Matty Hapoya, who's like a camera reviewer, and then like Dave 2D, a laptop guy that I've followed on YouTube for a really long time. All these people are in the same room as me. And I'm like kind of starstruck in the nerdiest way possible because, I follow a lot of YouTubers, and to be in their presence was like, what is going on right now? Of course, iJustine was there, and it was just crazy. There was like 1,000 people, and every one of them was, just about everybody there was someone I recognized from some media outlet or other. So basically, the way it works is you get kind of rounded up like cattle into the top level of the Steve Jobs Theater. That's like the upper level where it's all glass. And then at a certain point, when everyone's there and everyone's comfortable, they usher you down this crazy like concrete stairway that goes underground where the theater is. So the actual theater that you've seen, on the product launch videos and things, that's actually underground underneath the glass silo that's above it. And this theater is crazy. Leather seats, like super plush, comfortable seats. In the screen where they actually show the event is this massive, it's the entire size of the wall, and it's 8K. So like every little drop, every little detail is super clear. And on top of that, the audio system there like shakes your soul. I don't know who designed the theater, but it's like mind blowing. So anyways, I'll stop talking about this in a minute. But anyways, I go and I sit down with Matt Legrand. We sat next to each other. Ray and Des found different seats. And there was one seat left to my left, one open seat. And everyone's kind of, filtering in, trying to find seats and stuff. And Apple people are there trying to organize what's going on. And I'm joking with Matt Legrand, who's sitting next to me, and he's going, so, MKBHD is going to like sit next to you. And I was like, yeah, right, whatever. And then I turn and look up, and who's standing there but Marques Brownlee, MKBHD himself. If you don't know who he is, you probably do. He's like the biggest tech reviewer on YouTube. He's got like 17 million subscribers, a staff of people that work for him. And he's standing here looking at me saying, is this seat taken? I was like, no, man, go for it. So he sits down next to me. Couple of observations. Marques Brownlee is massive. He's a very tall man. I'm a very short man. I'm like 5'7". Marques, he's got to be like 6'2", 6'3", maybe. Very tall guy and very prominent figure and super friendly. So again, was not expecting to be chatting with Marques Brownlee, but here I was just kind of shooting the stuff with Marques, talking about YouTube. I talked to him, like, I just had some interesting questions for him, like outside of YouTube, do you still enjoy doing this? Which he said he does. And we just chatted a little bit about that. Of course, I did ask to take a selfie with Marques, and I did, and I'll share it on the screen now if I remember to edit that in. But yeah, it was a lot of fun meeting him and getting to know everybody. So the event starts and Tim Cook comes out onto the stage. He does his good morning, everybody speech. And we go right into the event where they announce the Apple Watch Series 9, the Ultra 2, the Apple Watch Ultra 2. They focused a lot on their sustainability efforts and going carbon neutral. There was like a 10-minute segment all about their environmental stuff that they've been doing, which I do appreciate, and we'll talk about it in a minute. And then they talked about the new base model iPhone 15 and the iPhone 15 Pro. So, couple observations about the event. I guess I'll just talk about the products first. So, Apple Watch Series 9 and Ultra 2, if you haven't seen my review yet, I guess I'll spoil it here. They're not like a huge leap forward in terms of innovation and in coming up with new stuff, right? Like, they're basically the same products, just with a few new features. And a lot of the new features are under the hood. The Apple Watch Ultra 2 got the new S9 SIP, which is a new internal processor where the CPU and GPU live. That gives it a little bit more processing power, but it doesn't just make it faster. It unlocks some new features like the new double tap feature and some other stuff. Now, the differences between the Ultra 2 and the Series 9 are largely the same as the previous models, like the Ultra and Series 8. You get a better build quality, you get more battery life with the Ultra, and it's a lot more money for the Ultra. So I won't talk too much about these in this podcast because you've probably seen the videos already. I think they're good products, and at the end of the day, a lot of people are complaining like they didn't really do anything new here. Well, I do agree with that. I think it's easy to forget that iterative updates are fine. Like, iterative changes happen, and this year is an iterative update. So if you're interested in the Series 8 or the Ultra and you hadn't bought one yet, now it's a no-brainer. Just buy one of these instead. So if you're a new user, the Ultra 2 and the Series 9 are good options. If you're an existing user and you have an Ultra 1 or a Series 8, there's not like a huge compelling reason to upgrade, even though there's a few new changes. So that's Apple Watch Ultra 2 and Series 9. And then when it came to the new iPhones, I got really excited about these myself. I was lent, I got a loaner unit for the base model iPhone 15, and I purchased with my money the iPhone 15 Pro. And I really like the iPhone 15 Pro, but I got to say, I think the sweet spot this year is really the base model iPhone 15 because it's lighter as a runner, like somebody who does active things. The Pro model is a little bit bulky. It's actually got a smaller footprint this year, but it's a little heavier than the base model. And the base model iPhone 15, which is on the table over there, it's so light. Like I can put it in the back of my shorts and I kind of forget it's there. So I really do appreciate that. Even though the cameras on the Pro model are better, if you're not a super nerd or someone making YouTube videos every day like I am, that may not matter for you. So I'd say if you're somebody that like typically buys the iPhone Pro model, consider the base model this year because it's really good. It's probably the best base model they've ever made. They look good, they feel good in the hand, and they're super light. And the difference between that, the faster refresh rate display, ProMotion, whatever they call it, on the Pro model compared to the base model, it's not that big of a deal to my eyes, at least. Like maybe I'm getting old, but I don't really see a huge difference there. Anyways, so that was the event in a nutshell. The way it worked, you get to watch the event, and then they usher you out to sort of a demo area, and you get to go hands-on with the new products in the demo area with a bunch of Apple handlers out there who kind of guide you on the new stuff and show you how it works. And then after that, this was the crazy part, you go back upstairs to that glass area, and that's where the madness begins. Everybody is filming first reactions, first look videos. Everyone is writing blog entries or doing social media stuff. It's crazy. Like everybody is going nuts to create content because it's kind of a race. Like you could tell there's sort of a very hectic environment to be like the first person to post something about the new iPhone or whatever. So everyone's up there editing their videos and posting them. And it was funny. It was like myself, Matt Legrand, and Ray Maker side by side on this like bar area where there was like coffee and stuff. And we were just like frantically editing our videos to upload them the same day. So it was a lot of fun. It was kind of crazy. I felt like I was part of the news or something, the way it worked, but it was a one heck of an experience. And, shout out to Apple for inviting me. It was something I will never forget. And hopefully, fingers crossed, they invite me back next year, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Okay, so after the event, we finally got to relax. We all went back to the hotel, and that's where the four of us, Ray, Matt, Des, and myself, decided that we'd all go for a run together at a place called, let me look at my notes because I'll forget. It was called Rancho San Antonio. So this place was like a park or open space for everybody to use. And that was only like a 5-minute car ride from our hotel. And it turned out to be a really cool spot. There were a lot of hills and the trails were really fun. But most interestingly was a huge amount of wild deer, like hundreds of them just walking everywhere. It was like at every turn, there would be a group of deer just hanging out. I was not expecting that in California, but a lot of deer. And so we went for a run. I think it was like a 3-mile run because the sun was going down and none of us had headlamps, so we didn't want to be out in the dark. And then after that run, we all decided to get dinner. We ended up getting like Uber Eats back to the hotel, just hung out a little bit, had a couple of beers, and it was really cool to just sort of decompress and relax after sort of a hectic morning. And that's where things got to be a lot of fun. So Matt Legrand, check out his YouTube channel because he actually recorded a video that was sort of a game show type vibe. He basically took a macro camera, and if you don't know what that is, it's the ability to shoot super close to an object with a camera. So he took all these macro shots of various watches from, Garmin, Polar, Wahoo, Suunto, Coros, and like so close, in fact, that you couldn't figure out what watch it was without like really knowing these things ins and outs. So he took a bunch of these crazy macro shots of all these different watches and he compiled them into a long form video where the four of us sat down and we played sort of a game on who could guess which watch was which before the other person. So it was a lot of fun, and Matt posted a video about this on his channel. So if you're interested in watching that, go check out his channel. But we had a lot of fun with that, and I won. So I'll take full credit for that. So after that was the next day, Sunday. Not Sunday. This was Thursday. Yeah, Thursday. Again, the other guys decided to pack up and leave pretty early in the morning, where I decided I'd stay the full day to maximize like my awake time and what I could do and how I could be productive. And then I decided to fly home on a red-eye flight at night. So I'd be sleeping on the plane and then I could land and then be productive again the following day, which didn't pan out so well. But we did get lunch before everyone left. And shout out to, where did we ate at some, dim sum. Yeah, I learned all about dim sum because I wasn't familiar with it, and Ray and Des apparently live for it. So they taught me all about it. It was actually really good. We had dumplings and stuff, and that was that. They all went to their respective flights. I went back to the hotel, did some more work, packed up, and then I was out of there. My flight left at like 9 o'clock at night, and I landed at 6 in the morning, I think, 6 a.m. So I barely slept on the plane, which sucked. And then I got home just in time for my kids to get on the bus and go to school. So it was a very exhausting few days. It was a ton of fun. And that was my experience at Apple Park. I don't know if you even care about this, but like I said at the beginning, this is my podcast. So I guess I'll talk about that here. Okay, moving right along into the next thing I want to talk about, and that is racing again. This is something I haven't publicly talked about on the main YouTube channel or on this podcast, but I have a race in 2 days. Today is Thursday. The race is Saturday. And what date is that? Yeah, Saturday. Yeah, so the 7th, October 7th. Yeah. October 7th at 9:30 a.m., I will be starting the Mid-State Massive 100-mile ultramarathon. This is a race that I completed back in 2019. I failed at in 2020. I skipped in 2022, I think. And then I'm back this year because if you've been following the podcast, you probably know my first 100-miler, or the 100-miler I was planning on running this year, got canceled back in July. That was the Vermont 100 due to flooding. So I've pivoted and now I'm signed up for the Mid-State Massive 100. Now, the reason why I haven't talked about it publicly or on the main channel is because I don't feel very confident. I felt pretty well trained back in July, but things haven't panned out so well since then. I feel like I've fallen off the wagon a little bit. I haven't been as diligent. So 100 miles is going to be a lot to ask from my body. I really don't know what to expect. So my last long run was about a week and a half ago, and I ran 15 miles at sort of a max effort that landed me right around an 8:30 pace, which I know it's not super fast, but I'm not a fast person. And I did this to sort of get a baseline of where I'm at with my fitness. It's interesting because my Garmin has been telling me that I've got a VO2 max of 55 estimated. And so it seems like the trend's been increasing because a few months ago I was saying like 50, 51. I've crept up since I have been actively training. But the endurance is what I'm worried about because I haven't done, my last really long run was like 25 miles. And that was like a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. And I haven't really been getting in huge volume runs. So to think about running 100 miles, not only the physical aspect, but the mental aspect of it is going to be tough for me. And I've been so busy with all of these YouTube projects and traveling and stuff that I haven't even fully wrapped my head around the fact that I'm running this race. I haven't even I was going to buy new shoes. I forgot to do that because my shoes were kind of falling apart. And I just haven't been planning properly. So an example of that is I wanted my wife to pace me for a section of the trail. I didn't find a babysitter. I didn't think about how she'd get from the finish line to the pacing starting point and logistically how we could do that because I don't have a crew. A lot of things were not planned. I didn't buy my electrolyte mix until the last minute. Thankfully, they sent it overnight. I have what I need, I think, and I'm going solo and I'm going pretty under planned. And I don't know if that's going to bite me or help me because the last time this happened was back in a couple of years ago at the Vermont 100, where I was not planned for it. And I didn't feel very prepared or trained for it, but that race went great. Like I ran it in 25 hours and change and I felt great the whole time. So fingers crossed I can somehow make that happen at the Mid-State. So what is the Mid-State Massive? Well, it is a 100-mile ultra that there's actually 3 different distances. There's 30 miles, there's 50 miles, and there's 100 miles. If you run the 100, you travel along the Mid-State Trail, hence the name Mid-State Massive, And that starts on the border of New Hampshire here in New England, and it finishes right on the border of Rhode Island and Connecticut down south. So you literally run through the middle of Massachusetts. You basically cut the state in half by running right down the middle of it. And you travel through a whole bunch of different towns and different parks and stuff. It's a really interesting race and a really cool format. And one thing I really like about this race is that they have drop bags, but the nice thing is it's one drop bag and it moves with you. So if you decide to put an extra pair of shoes in there or some layers or something or food, it moves along the course with you. So when you get to the next aid station, you can get back into that bag and swap things out. And by the end, you can just take it home. So that works out really well. So the variables here is going to be the weather. It's going to rain a lot. I'm not sure how my body will react to that. I'm pretty concerned about chafing. So, rain isn't so bad as a runner because it's better than being super hot. But on the other hand, rain can make you moist and uncomfortable, especially for long durations of time. When you're running for 25 to 30 hours, that wetness that's all over you with your vest rubbing on you and your clothes and stuff can lead to chafing. So it's going to be important that I bring along Body Glide, bring the lube. I know it's gross, but you got to do what you got to do and try to reduce all that friction. Another thing I'm concerned about is it's not going to be like super cold, but at night on Saturday night, it's looking like it's going to drop down to close to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which can feel very cold when you're wet, especially if everything's wet and you're in the 40s. That's going to be challenging, especially if I'm not moving very fast. And I think mentally, the rain is going to really wear on me because I'm kind of a fair weather runner. Admittedly, I enjoy the sun and feeling, nice, cool, crisp fall air here in New England and not like damp, rainy, wet, 40-degree weather. But it is what it is. And so by the time you hear this podcast, I might actually be running the race as you're listening to it. I don't know. I'm going to try to post this pretty quickly. And then after, I will do a follow-up podcast where I talk about how the race went and what went right and what went wrong and try to do some, lessons learned from the whole event. So for now, I'm running on Saturday. Don't know what to do, what to expect from my dad bod. And I'm excited and nervous and also dreading it a little bit just because of like my lack of training lately. But full transparency, we'll see what happens. It is what it is at this point. The hay's in the barn. I can't change anything. I'm just going to show up and hopefully it works out. Moving right along, races aside, trips aside, let's talk a little bit about the fitness tech news lately. First thing I want to talk about is Polar Global. If you're unaware of the company, they make GPS watches and they've been pretty quiet for a while. However, if you look at their Instagram account, depending on when you listen to this, you can see that they posted an image that says the wait is almost over. And there's a date of October 11th, 2023. That is only 6 days from the time of recording this podcast. There's a lot of rumors around on what this potential release could be. I don't know anything yet, but it is pretty interesting. And I'm hopeful for Polar because they're a brand I really enjoyed over the past couple of years. They make some good stuff, but lately it's felt like they're kind of falling behind a little bit because even their flagship devices like the Vantage V2 and the Polar Grid X Pro, they're pretty expensive. The Grid X Pro is like $600. It's got a lot of good features, but for $600, there's so many other options out there that are much newer and updated with more features and mapping and navigation and onboard music and things like that it's kind of a hard sell. So I am super interested to see what Polar brings to market on the 11th, and it'll be interesting to find out. Time will tell. I don't want to make any guesses on what it's going to be. I'm just hopeful. Here's my wish list. Again, I don't know anything, but my wish list is an entirely overhauled user interface. Like all of their devices have this sort of like antiquated user interface that can feel a little bit sluggish. Like when you're swiping through screens or navigating, things aren't super quick or responsive, and it just feels a little bit old. I hope they just kind of wipe it out and start fresh with a whole new user interface. I hope they update like the chipset and stuff. I hope they give it crazy good GPS on battery life. 40, 50 plus hours would be nice. I would really hope for an AMOLED display and full mapping and navigation. I know that's a big ask. That would be really cool. And two things that everybody else is doing now is contactless payments and some sort of music. Now, if they do music, I hope they don't do like what Chorus does with MP3s only. I understand it's hard to get in with the bigger companies, but like you need Spotify or Amazon support at a minimum to have onboard music because people don't want to fiddle with MP3 files. So if they could do that, they have a real game changer on their hands, because I really like Polar's ecosystem. I like the way their website works. Their app is pretty good. It's just like their hardware has started to feel a little bit old now. So that's an interesting upcoming release, and I'm interested what you think about that. If you're watching the YouTube version of this, comment down below. Let me know what you think is coming from Polar. Moving right along into the next topic of this podcast would be the new Google Pixel Watch 2. This one isn't very exciting, in my opinion, at least. Unfortunately, I was not invited out to Google in New York to see the device and play with it firsthand. Even though Apple invited me to their thing, Google didn't invite me to their thing. Google, come on, please. So the Pixel Watch 2, it's largely the same as the original Pixel Watch 1 with a few tweaks to the sensors. So they've updated the heart rate sensor. I think they gave it a new biometric sensor on the back, but largely the same. And I think they missed an opportunity here with the size of the watch. They increased the battery life a little bit on it from like 18 hours up to a full day of 24 hours, which is kind of nice. I think that's due to a new processor inside that's more energy efficient. But what I was hoping for this time around was a larger watch with a bigger battery and a bigger display. The Pixel Watch is a very small watch. I think it's 40 millimeters, which is very small. And even for me as a smaller person, I have 165 millimeter circumference wrists, and anything under like 45 millimeters feels kind of odd to me. Like I don't like really small watches, and I get some people do, but some people don't. And it would have been nice for them to come out with maybe two versions, a bigger one and a smaller one, give the bigger one more battery life and a bigger display, and keep the smaller one around. But that's not what they did. We've got one size, it's pretty small, and it's got a new heart rate sensor, which they claim is like 40% more accurate. And I don't have one to test. Time will tell. I'll try to get my hands on one soon. But yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it. Okay, with that, I think we've reached the end of this podcast. Just a quick update from me, what it was like to travel out to Apple, go through my upcoming race and how I feel about it, and a couple of tidbits of fitness tech news to keep you going this week. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, both on YouTube and on Spotify or Amazon or whatever platform you're using. And as a quick note, if you do enjoy this podcast, leave me a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can hit that 5-star rating, leave a comment. That really goes a long way. Again, check out the Patreon page if you're interested in more content or just supporting the show. And check out the merch store using code LISTEN20 at checkout for 20% off your order. With that, we're going to try to make this podcast come back to life a little bit, and I'm going to try to keep these updates coming. That might mean less editing in these the video form of the podcast, because that is time consuming. So let me know in the comments on YouTube if you don't care about the editing of the video. If I don't put overlays and screen grabs and stuff on the screen, will that bother you? Let me know in the comments down below, because it would save me a lot of time. And with that, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go back and get my run in. Actually, it's going to be more of a jog/walk, so I don't stress myself too much before the race in 2 days. And like I said before, stay tuned for the follow-up podcast when I talk about what happened at the race. Of course, there'll probably be a vlog about the race on the main channel as well. Hopefully the outcome's good. Okay, friends, I got to go now. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.